Ye- Hi, thank you everyone for showing up. And it means a lot because you're taking time off your evening. Uh, so my name is Nathan Chung. Today is July 9th, 2025, and this is a personal presentation by me at the Forest Library in Northampton, Massachusetts about the South Korean coup of 2024. The slides are actually on my personal page at cityuntangled.com/writings. So you can actually check it out later, download the slides. Oh, and actually, let me move that. Sorry about that. Okay. So I'm gonna, keep track of the time, but also just take some time to discuss and share some ideas. So an overview. This is a summary of the past 6 months from 2024. I made a big mistake already. It's from December 3rd, not December 23rd. I apologize for that, to June 4th. It's from the coup attempt in South Korea by the president and to the impeachment to re-election. And also we go into a brief history of past dictatorships. And because a lot of the primary sources are in Korean, it's hard to find them. So I'm gonna help play some of them and play some clips from them. And the dates are all in ISO dating standards with this year, first, month, and date. So, and just for a key thing, Korean names are family name first, usually of one syllable, and then given names last. Um, and given names are usually the two syllables. So there's gotta be mainly three parts here: the night of the coup attempt, past history, and then the impeachment. And I'm gonna end it with some lessons, and of course, I'll try to have a lot of discussion. And throughout the sections, I'm gonna open up the discussion. And so my background, I actually was born in the US, but spent my childhood in Korea and did a lot of moving back and forth. So I ended up keeping a pretty noticeable Korean dialect, but now I've lived in the US many, many more years than I have spent in South Korea. So it's just kind of this weird like dual identity. That's kind of my life. And a lot of my family members are in South Korea they lived through this coup attempt in on December 3rd, 2024. So I'm gonna play videos now. So this is the night of the martial law. And so this is the original announcement of the martial law by Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol. This is the actual official announcement in Korean, and I'm gonna play a dub after this.
친애하는 국민 여러분, 저는 북한 공산 세력의 위협으로부터 자유 대한민국을 수호하고 우리 국민의 자유와 행복을 약탈하고 있는 파렴치한 종북 반국가 세력들을 일거에 척결하고 자유 헌정 질서를 지키기 위해 비상계엄을 선포합니다.
So yeah, I'm gonna play the dub. There's a little bit of technical glitch, so this will replay every time I transition to the new slide. So apologize for that. So now the Reuters English interpretation.
저는 북한 공산
I declare martial law to protect the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korean communist forces, to eradicate the despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces that are plundering the freedom and happiness of our people, and to protect the free constitutional order.
비상계엄을 선포합니다. 저는 이 비상계엄을 통해
Through this martial law, I will rebuild and protect the Free Republic of Korea, which is falling into the abyss of national ruin. To this end, I will definitely eradicate the anti-state forces who are the main culprit of the country's ruination and conduct vicious activities.
반드시 척결하겠습니다.
Yeah. So this happened in the middle of the night at 10:27 p.m. Korean Standard Time. So now the actual, just warning, now you're gonna see actual soldiers and helicopters in the next few slides.
저는 북한
Okay, military helicopters. Let me just check if anybody signed in. Nobody. Thank you. All right. Military helicopters. So it's a brief clip, but they landed at the National Assembly soccer field. National Assembly is the legislative body, basically the Congress of the South Korean nation. So that's, and there's gonna be many more detailed scenes. And now, this is actually like a minute-long clip of soldiers entering and then going into the National Assembly building.
시민들 들어가는 거.
진짜. 뒤에 주세요. 잠깐만.
야, 카톡방에 남겨줘, 지훈아. 공간 진입했다고. YTN LG.
아이고, 야, 지금 안 돼! 적당히
So for context, a lot of those people are staff members for the legislators. And what's happening is the president orders soldiers to go in. These are special force soldiers, the 707th. He ordered them to go into the building to prevent them from voting down the martial law, which is their constitutional right. So, there are a lot of reporters too. Same thing. So this is one of the dramatic scenes from the incident.
더불어민주당 대변인과 충돌한 모습이 영상에 포착됐습니다. 제지를 받은 계엄군은 순간적으로 안 대변인의 흉부 쪽을 향해 총구를 겨냥했고 격분한 안 대변인은 손으로 총구를 잡으며 거세게 반발했습니다.
움직이지 마! 떨어져! 뭐라고! 떨어져! 움직이지 마!
부끄럽지도 않냐? 부끄럽지도 않냐고!
So she's not a legislator, but a staff person for the Democratic Party. That's the opposing party to the president's People's Power Party. And so she was basically telling them, aren't you ashamed? And she's telling them to let her go. So it's not like literally letting her go because she's holding on to them, but she's, I think, telling them to like leave her alone. Just see if yeah, audio is good. Just checking. So, and when you look at the slides later on, all the links are there, so you can do a lot more detailed look into them. And these are legislators. Some of them are in their 80s, scaling those side walls, which likely was left open so they can get in. Yeah, just a quick clip. And just to show, so I think it's widely accepted, the special forces that were sent, which is likely the 707 special forces, they were likely passively obeying the order because they also understood it's unconstitutional. This is what they can actually do. So they went into the building very slowly, struggling to climb the buildings. This is actually what they can do in about 30 seconds. So they are trained to infiltrate a building or a car in like 20 seconds, and it took them many minutes. And what's happening is, even though there were some violent incidents, all in general, most of the soldiers were, disobeying, passive by being
That
passive.
malicious
Yeah.
compliance.
Yeah, malicious compliance. Thank you for that word. So yeah, and sorry that this will keep happening, unfortunately, with the glitch. So I think I'll just read the first two, really. So the core of the martial law is easy to explain, right? So Article 77 of the South Korean Constitution allows for the president to declare martial law and for the National Assembly, which is the legislative body, to vote down the martial law. So at 10:27 p.m. Korean Standard Time on December 3rd, 2024, President Yoon Suk-yeol, he declared a surprise emergency martial law via TV and sent soldiers to the National Assembly building to prevent legislators from voting down the martial law. What happened was citizens ran, they became aware and they ran to surround the building and to delay the soldiers from entering the building. And that also allowed legislators to enter the building and vote down the martial law. What happened was not the entirety of the legislature, which is 300 members. They were not there. It was actually 190 of the 300 members. Some members actively stayed home to let the martial law happen, which shows the division in South Korea. That's a big topic. I'm just gonna,
Probably a party.
yes, absolutely. That's huge. And that will be covered in the next couple of slides. So this is the Article 77 in Korean. I'll just read the first sentence and then there's a translation from one of the Korean research labs. It reads, 대통령은 전시, 사변 또는 이에 준하는 국가 비상 사태에 있어서 병력으로서의 군사상의 필요에 응하거나 공공의 안전 질서를 유지할 필요가 있을 때는 법률이 정하는 바에 의하여 계엄을 선포할 수 있다. Getting emotional reading this. So that's the first item, number one, right here. This translated, it reads, when it is required to cope with the military necessity or to maintain the public safety and order by mobilizing the military forces in time of war, armed conflict, or similar national emergency, the president may proclaim martial law under the conditions prescribed by act. And actually, when you look at number 5, that's the one he was trying to prevent people from exercising, the members of the legislative body. When the National Assembly requests the lifting of martial law with the current concurrent vote of the majority of the total members of the National Assembly, the president shall comply. It's core issue. Basically, he's trying to prevent the Constitution from being exercised, or your constitutional right. So, it's mostly widely said to be a coup, and this is literally from dictionary.com. So coup or coup d'etat, a sudden and decisive action in politics, especially one resulting in a change of government illegally or by force. And a self-coup, which is the one in this case, it's a type of coup. So I'll read a summary of it. A coup d'etat performed by the current legitimate government or a duly elected head of a state to retain or extend control of a government through the dismantling of other government branches. Basically, he was trying to dismantle the legislators. So I will not read the full definition, but that's in summary what happened in my opinion. So now, before we go into history, do you have any questions? I'm gonna kind of ask for questions. We'll have a longer discussion at the end if you want, but I'll also see if you want to have any questions now. Yeah, go ahead.
So why was he trying to declare martial law to extend this? Was his rule at an end or something?
Well, he was only, so just because in case the audio from you is not clear because of my mic, basically what will happen was it's a 5-year term for the president and he had like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years left. What I'll cover is he was doing that because he and his wife were facing a lot of corruption charges. And also his party didn't have a majority control of the legislative body. So it's sort of a self-preservation thing, likely. Yeah, that's the motive.
This sounds familiar.
Yeah. I mean, it's a universal pattern, I would argue.
It is.
So, how about any other questions?
Is the reaction of the public to get in the way of the soldiers for the protect the legislature? Would that be a common thing that people would think to do?
Yeah, and I'll go into the details in the historical background. In Korea, it's almost uniquely yes, because this is actually one of the last martial law happened in 1980. So a lot of people got killed actually during that incident. So a lot of people learned through that direct experience that you have to resist in some way.
I was in college at the time,
Yeah.
so I did get some of the background of that.
Yeah,
This looked a little different, this looked faster. Like, this was a very fast response, like, the president says something. And literally people are like running for the legislature, it seems like.
Yeah, I
very
think the
fast.
whole thing ended in about like 6 hours. So, in 1980, even with resistance, it happened. The person I'm gonna explain, the guy who declared the martial law, he actually lasted for 8 years. So people learn from that to not repeat the same problem.
Let's try a
Yeah.
different mistake.
Yeah, I mean, the common saying in Korean is, democracy is written in blood, which is pretty uncomfortable, but I mean, that's at least
So
direct.
true.
Yeah,
That's not an untruth in many parts of the.
right. So yeah, and a lot of this question some of the slides will explain. So historical and political background. Yeah, so this is the makeup of South Korean legislature, according to 2024. So the red is the president's or the former president's party, President Yoon Suk-yeol. This is the People's Power Party, the conservative party of South Korea. And the blue is the opposing, more progressive Democratic Party. And these two are dominant, but also South Korea is a unicameral multi-party system, so they actually have some minority party representation. You see these are four small parties. The president's ruling party has 108 seats out of 300. The Democratic Party, the opposing party, they got 175, and the rest is made up through these minority parties. So, and it's not bicameral like the US. There's no Senate and the House of Representatives. It's just one legislative body. Yeah. And this actually explains a lot about the tension and his attempt because of the almost supermajority of the opposing party, he had very little. He and his party were not very effective in passing their bills.
And also, with 190 legislators that get there to make that vote to stop the martial
Yeah.
law. Some people in his party had to be there because everybody else doesn't add up to 190.
Yes, good point. A very small minority, but yes. And eventually there was a very tight fracture. A very small minority number from his party voted to both shut down the martial law and also to impeach. And one actually young legislator, he actually eventually he got kind of kicked out of the Red Party. He got kicked out of his own party, but he shifted to the Democratic Party. He was very outspoken. So Korea's geography, this little red circle here is South Korea, next to China, Japan, and Russia, and this is United States. I think South Korea's size is about Kentucky. And yeah, North Korea is slightly larger, but basically you're looking at like I think 2.5 Kentuckys. I might be wrong, but roughly it's a very small country.
I know you can fit all of it in Montana.
Yeah, yeah. And Texas,
Pretty
of
easily.
course, Texas too. Yeah, and this is the interesting thing about the boundary in South Korea. So, and I wonder if I can move this. I'm trying to figure out. Sorry about that. I'll see if I can.
Wow, that is a
Oh,
long time,
sorry.
1413.
Yeah, so it's Korea has an 8 province system that's very historic, and it's still retained to this day, except that there was this arbitrary split into north and south. So Gangwon province and provinces are very similar to states. This actually is it got cut kind of arbitrarily somewhere on one top third. So you literally have states that got split, and that's because outside forces. So until 1945, it was one country. So very uncomfortable our history about the North-South split. So South Korea, the one we're talking about, the one that's allied with the US, and and democratic capitalist economy and nation that's called the Republic of Korea in the international circles. And in North Korea, it's called the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. So that's the official terms. Basically, what happened was South Korea was under Japanese rule from 1910 to 1945. And when Japan lost World War II, because of the US-Soviet alliance, and believe it or not, they were allies at that time. The allies, the US-Soviet alliance, they forcefully divided North Korea into North and South so that each nation could control one part of it. And Korean War happened sort of as a kind of direct result of a split in 1950. And even now, a lot of politicians use the term North Wind, or it's called the North Wind factor. They use threats of North to try to win elections. This is ongoing tension. And so now impeachment was the impeachment process. So again, any questions now? Okay. And so the hinge of martial law, I'm not gonna go through this list, but basically, this was a very planned act, almost a year of planning, and there are a lot of these hearings where legislators are actually figuring out something is happening. So these are all disturbing hearings where generals were yelling back and forth at legislators. And these are the top three. I'm trying to figure out, sorry, I keep doing this. Yeah, okay, maybe that'll be better. Yeah, these are the key players. So Kim Yong-hyun, defense minister, and Yoon's high school alum. That's the president. There's a lot of alums. It shows the nepotism. And Yeo In-hyung, this is the chief of the Defense Intelligence Command. And again, the president's high school alum. And this guy, he's a pretty scary person. He's a dishonorably discharged Army intelligence commander. So they think he might have came up with, there were a lot of torture plans and kidnap plans that didn't obviously happened, but they were planning on kidnapping key legislators. They think he's the one behind it. He's on trial right now as we speak. Okay. And there are many other players, but those are the just sort of the noticeable three. And this documentary, during the hearing, they discovered that there are all these weapons for restraining people, the legislators specifically.
So that came into the legislative house then.
Yeah.
So they were like stats for future
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, and I think actually the one part of the detail I didn't cover too much is that oh, did anybody? I thought somebody joined. So the the National Election Commission office, they were also soldiers actually came into the building too. So these weapons are actually found among soldiers who came into the National Election Commission. So a big part of the whole coup is that it wasn't just a single target. They were sent both to the legislative building and the National Election Commission. And I think there are some other targets, but these were actually found among the soldiers who went to the National Election Commission. It's the story.
More nerve-wracking legislature, which is bigger, more public, and
Yeah.
like this feels like it's like an office, like a place where there's less public
Yeah.
interaction and.
He got into this idea that he was claiming for a long time that, there is a lot of election interference. He was claiming election interference and corrupt election commission. So he got influenced apparently by a lot of YouTubers too. So he was trying to basically shut down not just the legislator, but the election commission as well. And this is a major pro player, Myung Tae-gyun. He's a political broker and a fraudster for polling. He made up a lot of polling survey. He made up a lot of surveys to get the president elected. This is an actual recorded call that got leaked.
So voting.
국민의힘 대선 후보 경선이 시작됐습니다. 명태균은 자신이 실질적으로 운영하던 미래한국연구소에 여론조사를 지시했습니다.
연령별하고 지역별하고 다 그 맞춰고 여성하고
네.
그 맞춰갖고 곱하기 그 한 해갖고 한 2,000개 만들 있어.
이거 가지고요?
예. 그 차프지 뭐.
So I play that because it's literally this guy, this private pollster. He's conspiring with his employee on making up some numbers. and his employee leaked it actually to the press. So I'll explain I'm actually gonna have an actual interpretation in the next slide. So basically he sabotaged the I guess the primary for the People's Power Party, the Conservative Party. So he says in that previous clip, adjusting for age, region, and females multiply and create about 2,000 records. And his employee, the one who leaked it, Kang Hae-kyung, she says, so she explains what he meant. Basically, you multiply 500 records by 4 to create about 2,000 records. She's explaining his order.
Great.
Yeah. And this was possible because the Korean national law allows one-party consent for recording. So you don't even have to ask for permission. If you are a party to a phone call, you just press the record button and it gets recorded.
Right.
Yeah,
You're one
yeah,
of the parties.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
only if you're neither party.
Right.
You're gonna have.
So that's called wiretapping, but not if you're a party to it. And the idea is that, it's mutually assured destruction. The idea is that if you're doing something bad enough that you want to record it, once you leak it, it's gonna damage both of you. So it actually works kind of well for these kind of things. And just, yeah. And I think we're about halfway actually. We're about 30 minutes in. But yeah, so this is another one of the controversies. He ordered a lot of his bodyguards to drag out dissenters. I mean, some people were protesting at his public meetings, like this college student on the right. This person is actually a legislator from one of the minority parties, this guy being dragged out in the middle. And this guy on the left he's actually a poet who so this person at a book fair got or some with some who this woman she what's her name? Actually, I didn't put down her name. This woman got was involved in the blacklisting scandal in the previous administration. Basically, any artist that didn't like, they put them on a secret government blacklist, so to not give them business. And she was a part of that. So he was protesting her appointment to this book fair, which happened to be happy the female, the first lady first lady at the book fair. So he got dragged out for protesting. The question, Jim?
No, I do just.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So so I'm not gonna go into details, but the First Lady Kim Gon-hee, she's facing a lot of legal issues right now. So there's bribery from 2023, stock market manipulation for profiting from, it's getting investigated now after he got impeached in April, and academic plagiarism. What happened was for many years, most academics were suspecting that her master's degree paper was plagiarized, but they didn't investigate. They're too scared. But after the president got impeached on April 4th, uh, they basically revoked her master's degree right away. And she also has a PhD that was built on her master's degree. So I think what's gonna happen likely is they're gonna revoke her PhD as well. So, the next slide is actually gonna cover these events. So I won't go into too many details, but basically this is sort of the timeline from December 14th, where the legislators they vote to impeach Yoon as the first step, temporary impeachment. But the Constitutional Court has to vote for permanent impeachment within 180 days.
So that's the legislature starts it temporarily and the judicial branch has to continue.
Yes. So there is a sort of a division of powers, so to speak, in that process.
Which is different than in many countries where the whole process takes place in the legislative body.
Yeah, it's I noticed it's actually different, even from the US. Even though in the US, I think one of the Supreme Court justices, he or she presides over the impeachment
hearings,
proceeding,
yes.
but in here actually it's the whole court system that takes over the permanent impeachment.
That's a really interesting division. I kind of like it.
Yeah, so I think it came into being because of some lessons. And also what's interesting is he got arrested for insurrection during the impeachment proceedings.
So the president got arrested for insurrection while the impeachment was.
Yeah, that's one of the only crimes where you can get arrested as a president. So he was
enough.
Yeah, so insurrection and treason, I believe, and that will be covered in the next few slides. So this is the legislators voting to impeach it was a second attempt and they got 204 yes votes out of 300, which are pretty tight. They need 200 votes and they got 4 extra votes, which means some of it came from the Conservative Party.
투표 결과를 말씀드리겠습니다. 대통령 윤석열 탄핵 소추안은 총 투표수 300표 중 가 204표, 부 85표, 기권 3표, 무효 8표로서 가결되었음을 선포합니다. 네, 말씀드린
The people are celebrating outside the building, but also the legislators themselves are celebrating with a very tight second attempt.
So they
투표 결과를
successful.
No, yeah, they didn't get the 200 required.
Is there a limit on the number of attempts they can make?
I'm not sure. Not that I mean, but not that I know. But practically speaking, I mean,
If you don't
yeah,
get it in the first,
yeah,
you're not gonna.
yeah. So, and this is just a 10-second clip of really long protest. This is from April. They are now pushing the justice system, the constitutional court, to impeach him permanently. Yeah, the whole thing is 5 minutes, 5 minutes and 34 seconds, but I'm just showing you it's really long. That was only the first 10 seconds. So there was initially, especially there's a massive passion and push.
People.
Yeah, it does dwindle over time.
And when you look at it, they're clearly from a lot of different ages.
Yeah.
Different, I don't know whether it's socioeconomic, but really differently dressed when I was looking at that clip.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just one, it's not just college students.
Yeah, what happened was the older generation who survived the 1980s coup by the other president, John, who I'll cover, they sort of, I think it seemed that they kind of led the push, but then a lot of young people are also in support. So, and this will be just, I'll cover a few details from here. So there is a CIO, or the Corruption Investigation Office, or high-ranking official that was formed specifically to counter corruption among high-ranking officials, such as prosecutors. And Yoon is a former prosecutor. So this is the one who pushed for the arrest. They tried it twice, January 3rd and January 15th. January 3rd was unsuccessful because the president's bodyguards, the presidential security service, they formed a human wall around the presidential house, the residence, the official residence. And then the CIO had justification on the Constitution, Article 84, to arrest him for insurrection. And then on January 15th, they were successful. And what happened was the CIO threatened to take away the pensions of the bodyguards who interfered with the arrest. And that actually had an immediate impact. They gave up right away. And the president was impeached until March 8th, January 15th to March 8th. So these are just prosecutor corruption is a huge topic in Korea because prosecutors have the power to investigate and indict. They can be very selective on which crimes they investigate. And so they hold one of the highest powers in Korean society. So, and a lot of corruption charges. So these are all movies and TV shows made about that.
Are these easy to access?
Yeah, there are most of them on Netflix or on YouTube. Yeah. And you can actually use the title I put on the bottom to actually find them. So yeah. Oh, and I got the poster from this popular Wikipedia alternative in Korea called the Namu Wiki. So yeah, it covered a lot of politics and cinema. So now we're gonna actually cover past history of authoritarianism. We're at we're at 6:36. Do you have questions now? Okay. Yeah. So these were the two main dictators following the founding, Lee Seung-man or Lee Seung-man from 1948 to 1960. And then that's 3 4-year terms. And he got ousted because of April Revolution in 1960. And this person, who was pretty notorious for a lot of torture, Park Chung-hee, this person on the right, he actually is a former military general who led the May 16 coup in 1961. And then he became the fifth to ninth president from 1963 to 1979. So that's just 16 years. And he had some years remaining, but he got assassinated by his own head of security. And his daughter, Park Geun-hye, later became um, the president of South Korea, but she got impeached as well. Before Yoon, she was part of the same party, the People's Power Party, and she got impeached for another scandal.
And the military presence was by the US was under the first dictator.
Yeah, actually, they were throughout, I would say, I mean, they're still there. But the military presence, yeah.
More when it was a lot of US troops.
Oh,
They were
yeah.
shooting at people. I don't
Yeah.
think they shoot at people quite so much.
Not anymore, no, not anymore. But yeah, I think, yeah, the first two, maybe Easingman, primarily the one on the left. Actually, I'm not sure about that detail. And this is the person I'm gonna focus on, Chun Doo-hwan. He's another former military officer who took over the country via the 1980 May 17 coup. And so he was a head of the secret military society called Hanawhe, and they announced nationwide martial law. And he ruled from 1980 to 1988 as the president. So some of these details about him. So 1979, he first took over the military first in December of 1979. And in 1980, he announced the nationwide martial law to basically take over the whole country. And this was the last martial law until 2024, the one we're talking about. And one of the major events is that led to this May 18th Gwangju democratization movement. It's just called 518. And that's when there's this very political city called Gwangju. A lot of people protested against the martial law, and he sent soldiers. He claims he didn't, but I think the common agreement that he did. He did. He sent soldiers to shoot protesters. So a lot of high school kids even got killed. They think it's about at least 606 dead or missing. And what happened was in 1987, during his rule, one of the college protester, Park Jong-chul, a student protester, he died during police torture. I think they drowned him essentially. So the police attempted to cover up, but they failed and it led to nationwide protest. And so in 1987, the same year, they announced direction election. And I think in February 1988, that's when President Chun Doo-hwan, he steps down. So basically, a death of a student protester led to the regime falling apart. And a lot of movies got made about Chun Doo-hwan. This is about the military coup in 1979. This is about the Gwangju nationwide martial law and protest. This movie, A Taxi Driver, a second from left. 1987, the drowning death of the protester and cover up. And this is an alternative, this is disturbing alternate history, 26 years. It's basically children of parents who got abused by John. They grew up and they decide to assassinate him. This movie got made recently in 2012 while John was alive. He died a couple years ago. So what's interesting is his son, John Woo-won, he had this crisis of conscience. So he revealed a lot of issues with his family, like hidden wealth and violence and corruption. So they actually made a lengthy documentary about him. This is just one of the clips where he meets with the mother of a high school student killed during 518.
잘생겼지랑.
아니, 저랑은 비교도 안 되게 잘생기셨죠.
1980년 5.18 당시 시위를 하러 전남도청에 나갔던 문제학구는
So that young student, he was in high school. He went to join the protest in Gwangju on May 18th of 1980, and he got shot.
잘생겼지.
So there's some, I mean, he's the only one in the family that's really openly repentant about the issue. So, and for me, going back into my past, so I grew up in Korea during the 1980s and 1990s. What happened was, even though the regime fell officially, the dictatorship fell in 1988, a lot of the corruption and the issues with dictatorship persisted into 1990s. And one of the things was school beatings by teachers and these student police thugs called 선도부, Goodness Way Club. These were school sanctioned student police that could bully other students. So what I observed also, this is very common. Teachers were always asking for bribes, and if the parents were too poor to pay bribes, the teachers would beat up the children in front of the class to humiliate the students and also warn the parents to pay bribes next time. I witnessed this one time when I was in the third grade. This was in 1990, but yeah, pretty disturbing. It was a very common thing. So the reform against school beatings by students and teachers started in 1996, and then it continued until 2010 or so, but it pretty much is gone now. So I think the frustrating thing we were thinking growing up was, as we became adults, why don't people in our generation and previous generation make movies about getting back at, teachers and students who are bullying students? And I found out there was a very active movement by adult filmmakers from my generation. These are all the movies. So these are all about revenge films where students get back at teachers. Very violent, but a lot of is based on what actually happened. And I'm gonna focus on this movie on the second from left, which is Once Upon a Time in High School from 2004. 마주거리 잔혹사. So this actually it criticized the 1978 dictatorship. That's when Park was ruling the country. They actually had a drill teacher, usually an active military or reserve army captain. This guy was a army reserve captain. They had a drill teacher present in every school to teach students military drills in high school. So what happened was this student, the main character, he ends up beating the 선도부, the student police, really violently because they're abusing other students. And then these teachers are too scared to stop him when he's leaving school. Well, pretty disturbing movie, very violent. So I think we're like almost there. Impeachment verdict. Oh, and anybody, before we go to the next section, this is the last section. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this is the verdict. It's 22 minutes, but I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to play the very end.
전원의 일치된 의견으로 주문을 선고합니다. 탄핵 사건이므로 선고 시각을 확인하겠습니다. 지금 시각은 오전 11시 22분입니다. 주문, 피청구인 대통령 윤석열을 파면한다.
So the Constitutional Court unanimously impeached him. It was 8 members. One seat was vacant. So 8 out of the 9 members or justices they were unanimous. So next is the actual English dub from an Indian news channel. So you can actually hear it. This guy speaks really fast, by the way, the dubber.
The benefit gained by dismissing the respondent overwhelmingly outweighs the national losses resulting from the president's impeachment. Therefore, I issue the ruling with a unanimous opinion. Because this is an impeachment case, I will confirm the time of the verdict. It is 11:22 a.m. order. Respondent President Yoon Suk-yeol is impeached.
Yeah, he's yeah.
Did he have any additional consequences? Or he just was not in power anymore?
It's a rough ride. I'm gonna cover in the next few slides. It's a rough ride for him. Because he's facing insurrection charges. And gonna explain that in the next slide. And there were many translations. So there's actually a English translation that's different from the Indian interpretation. But yeah, I'm gonna answer your question in the next few slides. So these are reactions of the verdict.
친구들과 손을 맞잡은 채 주문을 기다리던 순간.
빨리 주문 좀 읽으세요. 주문. 피청구인 대통령 윤석열을 파면한다.
여기 떠나갈 듯이 박수가 터져나왔고 시민들은 눈물을 흘리며 얼싸안았습니다. 손에 땀을 쥐고 있던 시민은 긴장이 풀린 듯 얼굴을 감싸다 곧이어 박수를 쳤습니다. 조용하던 거리에도 환호 소리가 들리고 환한 얼굴로 하이파이브를 하거나 춤을 추기도 합니다. 체육대회를 하던 고등학생들도 다 같이 박수를 치고 환호성을 질렀습니다.
Yeah, so those are the ones who wanted the impeachment. They were reacting to the Constitutional Court's impeachment verdict happily. So, but I think not everybody wanted the impeachment. So let's look at the next set. These are his supporters.
나라가 아니에요. 이거는요, 나라가 아니에요.
너무 억울해요. 너무 억울해요. 우리가 어느 정도 기대는 하고 왔는데 윤석열 대통령님 사랑합니다. 사랑합니다. 힘내세요.
암울합니다. 대한민국의 자유민주주의가 드디어 사망 선고를 오늘로써 내렸다고 생각을 합니다. 하지만 저희 애국 시민들은 그 어떤 폭력 사태도 원하지 않습니다. 저희는 대통령님을 지지합니다.
So I have interpretation in the next slide, but I play that just to kind of convey the emotion, what the people are saying, the supporters. Unanimous agreement is ridiculous. This isn't a nation. It's so unfair. I love you, President Yoon. Cheer up. I think ROK's free democracy has received a death sentence today, but we patriotic citizens do not want any violence. We support the president. That was the last guy wearing the flag saying that. So different reactions. It is a divided country.
And what's really interesting is that the person that in that last comment, but we patriotic citizens do not want any violence. That's different than many intensely conservative groups around the world. There's a difference.
What's debatable is while he's saying that, there was a faction in that supporting group who actually broke into the courthouse.
Who did?
There was a vandalization of the court it was like a small group of, I think, 50 people, and it was a big issue. So it's hard to figure out what they really mean.
Right, because each person is also an
Yeah.
individual.
Right.
And what you're gonna say on camera on the news is not necessarily what some other people are doing. Got it.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think we got
Is that the lady who?
Yeah.
Done?
Yeah, she's the spokesperson for the Democratic Party. So she had the interview, what day was that? Actually, I forget what day. I think right after the impeachment. I forgot the date, but she basically said.
근데 일단 저도 군인 무섭다는 거 알고 총 무섭다는 건 아는데 그때의 그 총은 나라와 국민을 지키기 위해서 가지고 들어왔던 게 아니잖아요. 뭐 저도 나중에 언론을 통해서 소극적인 군인들도 있었다라는 이야기를 접하고 좀 가슴 아프긴 했는데 어쨌든 그렇게 국민들끼리 서로 대치하게 만든 사람이 잘못이죠. 그 원인을 탓해야 된다고 생각을.
Yeah, I kind of cut off the clip. Basically, she was saying that some people criticized her for doing something very dangerous by grabbing the gun, and she was a little bit differential. I think she basically said, "I know soldiers and guns are scary, but that gun back then wasn't brought in to protect the nation and the people." She's basically explaining that you have to really bring people to account, the ones who caused this kind of division. So she said basically shift the focus away from me into the issue at heart. So An Gyu-ryung, that's her name. She was featured prominently because of that, the rifle being pointed at her.
Like use some discernment about what the situation is. I was thinking about how powerful that is, because that happens all over too. You see one or two standing in front of a lion right here, and they have their hands up or they're holding the gun, and that places those people in that here having to really look at what are they doing.
Right.
Because it's not another armed combatant. what's their sister or what they remember their mom like for when they were little. It's a really powerful thing that she did.
Right.
And very hard to counteract if you're in the riot gear. It's hard.
I wish I'm worried. I hope I'm capturing your audio well because of my mic, but yeah, I wish, yeah, anyways. So these are some additional clips. So all these people got interviewed, they were at the National Assembly building, tried to do their thing. This father stopped soldiers, he blocked the soldiers. This activist mom and daughter, they met him. It's kind of funny actually. They actually met each other by coincidence. And this is a disturbing thing. This person, second from right, he's a reporter who got restrained by soldiers with cable ties at the beginning of the martial law, but then they let him go. So people are claiming there was no violence, but there was some violence. And this guy, last guy, he was an actor and former special ops. He talked to the soldiers to try to calm them down. He got criticism for being too attention hungry, but when you listen to him talk, I mean, he was trying to help. He was actually asked by a news channel to talk to them. So it's not like he just jumped, on his own.
Yeah, he wasn't headed for a photo op. Hey, look at me.
Yeah.
He was trying to.
And I mean, honestly, he looks great because he's an actor. He's always trying to look great. It's not like he was, I'm not sure, I don't think he was planning on this. He's always ready for the camera. That's his job.
Right, exactly. That it's like a lot of off-duty police
Yeah.
officers are prepared to handle stuff they handle at work. And I think it's interesting that he would be ideal because he is a special ops person.
Right.
He understands who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's many, many interviews after the impeachment. People are afraid to speak, obviously, before the impeachment, but they felt free to speak. And so I'm just gonna read the English part of it, the first part of it. So this is what the former president Yoon is facing now. His insurrection investigation ongoing. He actually went to jail today again. So basically, Article 87, a person who creates a violence for the purpose of usurping the national territory, subverting the constitution shall be punished according to the following classifications. A ringleader shall be punished by death, imprisonment for life, or imprisonment without prison labor for life. That's what he's facing right now. So I'm not gonna read the rest, but it's another translation from a Korean research lab, which I think is a part of the government actually. And we're almost there. Yeah. Oh, and as I'm wrapping up, I just wanted to play this interesting clip from a Canadian YouTuber who studied in Korea. He saw this global pattern, and while he's being really irreverent, I think it makes a lot of sense in some ways. Profanity warning is bleeped out.
And actually, irreverence is one of those ways to get underneath people's defenses. That's used a lot on this.
And he's from Canada. He's in Canada.
These things. Here's the problem. Just agreeing with these things doesn't automatically make you a good leader. For me, that's like table stakes. That means fucking nothing. You have to solve these problems. Housing affordability in Canada has skyrocketed. Nobody can fucking get a house. Wage growth has not kept up with inflation. If you agree with these things, but you can't solve these problems, you're actually doing these things a disservice. You are hurting these issues because regular people see they tie that stuff with grocery prices going up, and then they flip to the most insane parties in the world. And by the way, this is on pretty much both sides of the aisle. I mean, again, the guy in Korea was deeply conservative and he's 22%. We are being let down.
Yeah, basically, he studied in Korea. He was discussing the coup for most of the show, but he was basically tying that to more of a global pattern, unrest over economic issues and social stability. And really, we're almost there. Thank
these things. Here.
And this is really, he got elected. Lee Jae-myung, his competitor from the Democratic Party, he got elected. Very dramatic in early election in June 4th, literally like a month ago. So Australia Broadcasting Service, which is the public broadcaster that covered this, Oh, and one interesting thing is in May, actually, the Supreme Court of South Korea, they tried to prevent him from becoming a candidate using two charges of election law violation. And that itself got heavily criticized, a lot of nationwide protests. So the court system backed down. So there's also discussion about the court system, or at least some of the justices being a part of the ousted, impeached president's party. So I'm gonna just play this clip.
After months of political turmoil, South Koreans have elected a new president. Our East Asia correspondent Kathleen Calderwood joins us now from Seoul with more. Kathleen, who is the new president and how significant is this result?
Good morning, James. Well, South Koreans have delivered a new president, Lee Jae-myung. He was the opposition leader, now, of course, the president-elect. He is from the centre-left Democratic Party here. And, of course, this is hugely significant because it is hopefully marking a new chapter for South Korea after months now of political turmoil. It's, in fact, exactly 6 months since the Conservative leader, now impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol, made that late-night declaration of martial law.
Yeah, so that's your clip. Yeah, and let's see. So in contrast to this, let's see how the United States, the White House reacts.
After months of,
it's not very just to warn you, it's not super flattering for the U.S. press secretary. I'll just play a clip.
I'm not worried about that.
Well, yeah.
Like, I don't even know why she has that job, but anyway.
That's, yeah, you know, just very.
Also in Asia, just does the White House have a reaction to the results of the election in South Korea?
Yes, we do. In fact, let me find it here for you. It should be somewhere in here. Thank you. We do not, but I will get you on, Jeff. Go ahead.
Like, it is likely that people in the White House itself don't even know where South Korea is. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, you know, yeah. I will refrain from opinionating about this.
Yeah,
we'll let you know.
And really, this is the last few slides, the last two slides. So one, a really tough road ahead. A big problem is the depopulation going on in Korea. You know, people are not having kids. People are getting older. So from 1960 to 2025, population went from 25 million to 51.7 million, roughly. You know, and now what they're projecting, this is from the Statistics Korea, basically the agency, government agency, similar to the U.S. Census Bureau. So it's a pretty authoritative agency. What they're projecting, oh, and the green on the left is men, and the blue on the right is women. What they're predicting based on the current trend is by 2072, population will go down from 51.7 million to 36.2 million. And also look at the age distribution.
It's going to be, and it's
Yeah.
the old people.
And yeah, the upper part is older people, and yeah, it's gonna be the median age. So median age in 1960, 19 years old, literally median age of 19 in 1960. 2024, 46.7, and then 2072, 63.4. So big problems. Yeah.
And really different from if you look at Nigeria. Nigeria looks right now like that first one, like half their population is under 18.
Yeah, and this will be a very big problem. I mean, it's already happening with ghost towns and yeah. You know, and this is really the last slide. Thank you for staying. So it's about 7 p.m.
The best.
Thank you. Yeah, and
really well organized.
At the, you know, after this slide, there's actually more detailed slides, which I will not present, but you can read it. But these are my personal lessons and opinions, you know. So first, be wary of those who exploit emergencies to do something illegal or very problematic. And second, you know, power of autocrats come from those who submit. So you want to be aware of both physical violence, such as martial law, and also emotional violence, such as network harassment on social media, people grouping up together to harass people for different viewpoints.
And also even not even just violence, but other methods of control. Sort of, I know there's a year lesson, but I thought I should.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. And yeah. So yeah, like you said, there are other methods of control that you gotta be aware of. Censorship, intimidation, or misinformation, labeling somebody in a negative way. All these things you gotta be aware of. And the real big lesson for looking at Yoon's conduct for me was, seeking self-validation should be done in private in most cases. So politics is one of the quickest way to reinvent your image. And Yoon himself has, I think, some personal issues because it took him, I think, 9 exams to become a prosecutor. He failed like 8 times.
So something was
Yeah.
wrong with him.
Yeah. So he's very unhappy. And it also means that his family has some money to support him while he was studying and failing like 8 different times. So, learning from that is, people who are unfit for public service and who are because they're mainly focused on self-validation, um, you know, their actions affect everyone with their policy and behavior in politics. That's one reason why it might be good for people who are really focused on self-validation to go into something in private rather than politics.
Right. I mean, a really common place to see that is actually acting. And it's less damaging there, or at least it was in the past, because
Right.
there was a line between entertainment and politics. I think part of the problem in this country, which I don't know if it's true yet, is that line is getting blurred badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also if people would go into anything for self-validation, you kind of get in their way of the plans. And so like a lot of things that I read something about the Dalai Lama, and he's like, if you're going to something for yourself, it's very narrow. If you're going to focus outward on other people, it's a much more powerful, probably more effective thing than only being focused on yourself. So I think it's kind of narrow to go into anything.
Yeah.
It's less possibly less damaging to go into like acting than politics, for sure. But even there,
It's like the health of the person themselves is going to suffer.
Right. True.
The damage that they can do sort of more globally, there are places where that could be contained.
It's true. Yeah. Maybe it's like if they're focused on self-validation, maybe they should there.
Yeah, like,
We should get some help.
like one of a really bad place to go into someplace for self-validation is actually mental health services. Because if you're going into mental health services to get self-validation, you are directly in a position to be predating and harming the people you're claiming to help. Right. That's right. I think politics is very similar.
Yeah.
Because when you started saying, be wary of people who exploit emergencies, a patient in a crisis one-on-one with a therapist who's got this self-validation problem, that's a bad deal. But also broadly in society, if people are distressed because there's emergent things going on and someone in politics is sort of exploiting the whole group, that's not a good thing.
Yeah. And I actually had a personal experience. I briefly tried stand-up comedy in this area, and there's a lot of drama in comedy, and that got really stressful. Like just pretty much unpaid hobbies, the comedian, they take it very seriously, but there's a lot of competition. And I hated it, but then I started thinking, oh my God, like what if these folks actually went into politics? That'd be really bad. It was nice that actually they expressed their like energy and frustration through comedy rather than doing that in the public sphere.
Right, it happens in athletics.
Yeah.
Especially pro athletics.
Yeah. I mean, it's if you're gonna be aggressive or express some kind of inner like anger or whatever, athletics, comedy, or some private sector activity that
we're used to being able to
Yeah.
judge that. Like George Carlin was a really angsty, angry dude.
Yeah.
And he also made some really valid points. So he's kind of, his niche was pretty good. I think he would have been a terrible politician. Like,
Yeah. So, and yeah, and just this is literally the last point. As society get more complex, the burden of understanding the government process can lead to frustration, even with effort at transparency. Doesn't matter how well you explain it and plan it out. If it's just complex inherently, there's a limit, you know.
right, and a lot of people don't know how to account for somebody's learning style. And when people are stressed, like this last thing we've been through, just watching people go through COVID.
Yeah.
People whose brains normally work pretty well under COVID stress didn't function as well as their norm. And there is, I don't know how this is happening, but there is among regular people this idea that they are not capable of understanding something, at least on a basic level where they could ask questions, hold people accountable that what they are saying is true. And so it's easy to obfuscate.
Yeah, there's a thing I read about called complexity bias, but you meant games.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when something's too complicated, your brain decides it's not enough effort to sort it out, and then you have to do a shortcut or take someone's opinion. So the more, like you're saying, the more complicated it is, you go, well, I can't figure it out because I don't want to spend the energy. So I'll just listen to the second.
Right, and then we have a reference and expert bias. That doesn't always work well, because in my personal life, there are a lot of ways in which I encounter access barriers. Vision, cognition, motion, and typically those things are solved by experts who don't experience the problem. So there's sort of a really good marriage, and this happens in medicine too, like the synergy between what you know about your own health and your doctor knows. If you're working together, you can get it right almost 100% of the time. But if you go with just what the patient knows about their body, they're right roughly 60% of the time about what's going wrong with them. And the doctor is right about 40% with the broad book learning, and right. But if you put the two together and they can work together, you get a really good solution. And I kind of wish more people knew that about anything. Like if as a group of people, someone invited, if they're trying to do something, that's a really good focus.
Or then it's kind of like, how would you, sort of understand complexity through trusted sources, or partnerships.
Right, how you build trust.
And so you can have like a partnership in different areas too, not just your doctor, but in other ones where you're like, I trust this person to understand this part of the complexity, communicate. That's like a government, I guess.
Right. Well, what I was thinking about was the thing that was really beautiful about this current response to this coup in South Korea is that age of people who were there for that one in 1980.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of them. Probably not all would agree with each other about a lot of things, but they did agree about this. And then other people who had not lived through that didn't have, they were too young, or they weren't born,
Right.
or they were older and didn't experience it the same way. They followed the people who, as a group, really went, we're not doing this. This is not happening. That was really powerful.
Yeah. So
because they weren't following one leader. They were as a group with a bunch of people who were like, whatever we do, it can't be the thing that happened last time. That was really powerful.
yeah. So just let's let's go to the last slide, just thank you slide, and then we can discuss more. Let's discuss more after I stop recording. Yay. Thank you very much. Let's stop recording.